defend itself against mini drone attacks? The small size of the drones means that they cannot be detected by traditional radars. India is developing anti-drone equipment, but can this guarantee full protection? With existing countermeasures seemingly powerless, what are India's immediate options?
Tiny little carriers of terror, with nothing but the wind beneath their little rotors. They've signaled a new nightmare for Indian security. We've long been in the age of military drones, but it's the most simple of these unmanned air machines. Tiny little hobby quadcopters that are now the compellers of India's sleepless nights. The monster question: can India stop mini drone warfare, or are we doomed to be overwhelmed? The bad news first: there's no blanket solution, and the literally miniature size of the threat means there's never going to be 100% defense against it. A comprehensive approach is going to be necessary. First things first, traditional air defense radars at our military stations and airports are programmed for large targets like aircraft, helicopters, and bigger drones. If they're calibrated to detect small hobby drones, even birds would set off radar alarms, overwhelming the system and causing chaos and confusion. Apart from sanitization of areas around sensitive installations, specialized equipment does exist to counter drones in flight. But these again are hit or miss, with no guarantee of full protection. As you can imagine, the Indian Air Force and Bureau of Civil Aviation are scrambling to address the threat to installations. Most technologies, including anti-drone jammers and systems, are deployed in the terminal stage of a rogue drone's flight path, the last 100 meters or so, when there's very little reaction time. It would therefore be hard for a defense system to precisely identify a rogue drone's vulnerabilities and then deploy countermeasures. India's own DRDO says that its anti-drone device can bring down micro-drones at a distance of up to 3 kilometers and use lasers to target them from distances of over 1 kilometer away. Another security force operating under the Home Ministry recently imported a high-powered electromagnetic system, which zaps drones with an electromagnetic pulse, causing them to crash. But these systems could not be deployed at airports because of the risk to incoming aircraft. So you begin to see the complications in anti-drone defense. The outlook remains unfortunately bleak. Many existing countermeasures will be powerless against a swarm attack, a pack of drones flying into their targets from multiple directions. The next big scare began in Jammu, for which there are few answers yet. With Sandeep Unithan in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Jammu Airport and Kaliachak Police Station were near misses, but the threat is real, it's present, it's clear. What should India do? Is there anything we can do to try and save our airports, our high-value targets from these drone attacks? Is it virtually inevitable? Why is it happening at this time when the Indian government is just about picking up the pieces of the political conversation with parties from Jammu and Kashmir and also opening back-channel dialogue with Pakistan? What's at play? How should we see this threat? What can happen next? Joining me for perspective, Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain, former General Officer commanding 15 Corps, with us for a perspective from the Indian Air Force, because it was the Jammu Air Base, airport, which was under threat in the first go. We had Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia, former Air Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Western Air Command. Just what kind of threats does this throw up in India's defense as it exists at this moment? We've got Abhijan Rej, Security and Defense Editor at The Diplomat, Director of Research at The Diplomat Risk Intelligence. I've got Sandeep Unithan joining us. He is the Executive Editor of India Today magazine, our top internal expert on drone warfare. And for a perspective on, how this impacts the nascent civilian drone industry in the country. We've got Kanav Kumar, co-founder at Better Drones. So welcome.
Thank you.
I want to go across first to General Hasnain for his perspective on this new threat that has emerged. Is it inevitable given what had happened between Armenia, Azerbaijan, given what had happened in Saudi Arabia? Is it just about a matter of time that this had to happen and there will be a terror attack? How serious is this threat? How do you view it? What do you think we should be doing now? General Hasnain.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for having me on your show. Let me start by telling you that we have been observing over the last 3 years or so, essentially the use of small quadcopter drones in the Punjab area, along the international border in Punjab, in Jammu, not so much in the Kashmir region, primarily usage for logistics, 2 to 3 kilos of payloads to be dropped somewhere. Benign, nothing very great about it. But it was inevitable that this would progress further with better navigation aids, with better carrying capacity, payload capacity, and having improved the overall capacity to be able to launch an IED, an improvised device, explosive device, onto the place where it was selected to do. Then came the conflict in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and you saw the example of the Aramco refinery in Saudi Arabia, and I think from there this whole thing got an impetus. Now the moment what we are seeing here, the threat is there, but I think it's just a very crude effort at this stage. It will develop further, there's no doubt about it. At this stage, it's still a very crude one, essentially a technology demonstrator, essentially it is sending a message. You see, it is important for whoever is doing this to remain relevant in Jammu and Kashmir. With all the conditions of stability which have been achieved and the peace process having started there all over, it is important for these anti-national elements to remain relevant. I see this particular incident as essentially an attempt to try and be relevant.
So you're calling this a nascent threat?
Okay. My last point on this, it's an important aspect to remember. When the car bomb came and when we were hit by the IED in Sri Lanka, we could not find a solution to it. We have not found a solution to the car bomb till today, let me tell you, with all the technologies of the world. So this is something which will keep developing. These are things which will develop as a part of warfare, hybrid warfare in particular, and we will have to learn to live with them.
No, but the one difference between a car bomb and a drone, Marshal Ahluwalia, is that a car bomb can only attack a convoy or a cavalcade or a moving target, or it can come and attack a stationary target, which in a case of a high-value target will have a perimeter security around it. But with a drone, you can go and drop it on a very high-value air force or military installation, which can have huge consequences. General Hasnain describes this as a nascent, crude threat. Is that your assessment as well? Or is this something which completely forces a thorough re-evaluation of how we view securing our national and defense assets?
Well, Rahul, I just totally disagree with that statement that this is in its nascent stage. It is not a very big threat, etc. Threat has been developed for many years now. We have been at it trying to spruce up the defenses for quite some time. The threat is real. The threat is military. You can use these UAVs, which are smaller in size, for reconnaissance, for intelligence, for surveillance, etc. But most importantly, you can imagine that these two so-called crude IED bombs, if they had hit the helicopters or the attack helicopters on the tarmac, there would have been plenty of destruction. And that destruction would have given the opposite side so much of publicity that that itself would be a psychological warfare effort. More importantly, in the future, you see, you have many types, you would say, or not many types, but between 1 to 5. That's what is available in the market today. That's commercial. Because the FAA, that's the American Aviation Authority, has defined them between 1 to 5, type 1 to 5, depending on the size, depending on its range, depending on its endurance and other things. But militarily, you can classify it a little differently. You can classify the tactical, the semi-tactical, and the strategic. So therefore, this depends on the kind of payload that you can carry. You can imagine the kind of payload between 0 to 50 kgs, and then from 50 to 200 kgs, 200 to 2000 kgs plus. Now, to define, what we're getting, like the MQ-9, the Navy is getting, that is huge. It can go to 1,500 kilometers, carry over 1,000 kgs of weapon load, and be destructive to the point targeting. We don't want to get into that at this point in time. How do we protect that? That is easy to do. But protection against these small targets, it is a little tricky, but not impossible. It is tricky because first thing you need to do is pick up a target. Next, you need to identify it. Thirdly, you need to be able to kill it. So if you're not able to pick it up in time, you're not going to be able to track it and fire a killer, any kind of weaponry that you have, to kill it in the air or on the ground. Now the question is, what are the assets that are available to you to be able to bring these small drones down? As far as picking up is concerned, there are plenty of sensors, what they call the MTS, the multi-targeting sensors, which work in an electromagnetic spectrum to be able to pick up the target, because the time period for you to pick up, identify, and launch is just a few seconds. And the distances we're talking about here is anywhere between about 2 kilometers to 3 or 4 kilometers. So therefore, you have to pick up, so you have these MTS working in the electromagnetic field to be able to pick up. But more importantly, how do you kill? So this is the technology that is moving forward very rapidly. And what is happening now is you're converting, the electricity into light. That is where the laser comes in. So
Okay.
what you refer to as laser.
Can I clarify?
Just one
Can I
second, please.
clarify
I want to go
something,
across to Sandeep Punithan on what was used in this instance, because huge unmanned drones are not what we saw. These are very crude drones, very light drones, and yet somehow mercifully they were not able to hit the target, which seemed to have been the helicopter that was parked close by. What details do you have about, by speaking to officers in the security establishment, about what was the motive? Is this them testing their capabilities? Is this a failed terror attack? And about the nature of the drone that was used and the explosives that were attached to it. Sandeep.
Well, Rahul, firstly, the drone seems to have been a smaller drone, or possibly a quadcopter of the kind that are commercially available off the shelf. But what is interesting here is that the payload, the explosive that it was carrying, appears to have been very sophisticated. And military engineers, sappers who studied the bomb damage pictures suggest that this was actually a shaped charge that was used. Because if you see the way a 6-inch slab of concrete had been punched through, that is a kind of explosive force that is delivered by a shaped charge. So if you're looking at drone operators who have the ability to mount conventional shaped charges on commercially available drones, then the game completely changes. Then you're not dealing with a bunch of amateurs. You're dealing with someone who has access to military technologies and weapons and explosives, and it opens up a whole new world of possibilities of the kind of targets that can be hit by these. And Rahul, this is not something new, that the government has always known of this fact. At least 2 years back, there was a committee of the Bureau of Civil Aviation and Security which sat down and identified counter-drone technologies, because they knew that an attack of this kind was, it was only a matter of time before it, unfolded. And this is exactly what seemed to have happened. But, regrettably, our technology has not been deployed in the field as yet. We have instances of, 1 or 2 government agencies. The NSG has a couple of these, counter-drone technologies, but they've not been deployed in a way that, inspires confidence, especially around your vital areas, vital establishments.
But how much would it cost, Sandeep, if we were to establish this anti-drone technology at our various air bases? But where do you go? Do you go to an Air Force air base? Do you go to airports? But they could just pick some other target. Given the sheer number of high-value installations, how much would it cost to set up some kind of a security mechanism to cope with these drones?
Well, Rahul, again, this is something that the government and has to kind of decide what is the figure that they want to put aside for security, because the sky is the limit. You cannot end up protecting every single base and installation. They have to look at a certain amount of vital areas like airports, air bases, and all that, which are very close to these close to the international border and the line of control. So at least you have a basic defensive setup. And because what we are seeing in J&K and along the LC is something like what we saw about more than 20 years back when the first wave of Fedayeen attackers, if you remember, Rahul, started hitting various military bases. So this is a new level of warfare that we've graduated onto, and it's only a matter of time before this becomes more widely proliferated, and with the kind of sophistication of drones that are coming in. They're becoming smaller, they're able to carry heavier payloads. So, it's opening up the country to a whole new, form of irregular warfare, gray zone warfare, you can call it whatever, but the threat is very real and staring at us in the face.
Okay, so what does one make of the timing of this drone attack? Remember, the last time there was a peace effort between India and Pakistan, and Prime Minister Modi went to Rawalpindi and met with Nawaz Sharif, there was a terror attack soon after. Now we saw the Indian Prime Minister meet with political leaders from Jammu and Kashmir. Devendra Rana joins us. He's one of the senior most leaders of the National Conference, understands the politics and its dynamics in Jammu and Kashmir, and also has a good sense of military strategy. Now, Devendra Rana, what do you think of the timing of this attack? Soon after Farooq Abdullah, Omar Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti, Ghulam Nabi Azad and other leaders from Jammu and Kashmir met with the Indian political leadership in Delhi. You've had this drone attack in Jammu and then at Kaliachak, the drones being found. What's your sense of what's going on, and what do you make of this timing?
It's a very serious matter. Terror and talks cannot go along together. The moment these talks internally started, because there's a dimension of external dialogue also, and there is a feeling that some track 2 dialogue is going on, because of which ceasefire also happened. And people of Jammu and Kashmir get relief when there's a ceasefire. But this kind of machinations by Pakistan to disturb peace, now whether this is a machination by the state actors or the non-state actors in Pakistan, they will know, but definitely the drone attacks is a new dimension, and Pakistan is responsible for what has happened. And this is a very, very serious matter. Killings have started, are happening in Kashmir also. And there are not 2 incidents, there are 4 incidents. And the message has to be loud and clear. Internally, a very good start was done by the Honorable Prime Minister when he had an inclusive dialogue. And dialogue broke the logjam, and dialogue is the way forward. Nobody says that war is the answer in Indo-Pak relations or any other relations with any other country. Dialogue is the way forward. But for dialogue, it can't be those double standards, and where one side the dialogue goes on, the other side terrorism goes on. Terrorism is not acceptable in any civilized society and should not be tolerated. I think it is not acceptable. And terror and talks cannot go together. It might just sound like a phrase, terror and talks don't go together, but messages have to be loud and clear that we will not tolerate terrorism on our soil, and that there should be no compromise on that.
No, but that throws up, General Hasnain, the prospect of any terror attack, even if it is done by non-state actors in Pakistan, potentially derailing not just the India-Pakistan ceasefire, but also this dialogue that's just started between the Modi government and the political leadership of Jammu and Kashmir.
See, Rahul, in my initial statement, I also mentioned this aspect of remaining relevant. You've seen over the last 2 years, ever since 5th of August 2019, the kind of situation which has emerged despite COVID and everything, the kind of situation that the security forces, the political establishment, the bureaucracy has been able to achieve in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this is not something conducive to Pakistan's interests. So whenever something happens which is going to take the process even further, there will be efforts to try and pull this back. There will be obstacles. I entirely agree with what Devendra Rana Sahab says. There will be obstacles of this kind, and it will always mean some kind of thing by which the attention is diverted all over again. In this case, why I particularly mentioned, and I again counter what Air Marshal Ahluwalia says, I would still remain on that perception that this was only a demonstrator. Much more will happen in future. I have never said that they don't have the capability in this world. I mentioned all the prospects of what drones can do. Drones can come and do a hell of a lot here. But for the moment, the attempt was essentially to remain relevant to the situation. And this very correctly what Sandeep had said. Just like 20 years ago when the Fedayeen came, here was something completely new. I was there in the valley when the Fedayeen came. I know the manner in which we were taken by surprise at that time. This is exactly what is happening now again. Although I think we are still a little better prepared to handle the situation from every angle.
Abhijnan, Raj, are we, according to you, better prepared to deal with this threat, or has the security establishment been caught wanting, and should we have done more given what was already happening in Saudi Arabia, given what had happened in global conflicts?
See, Rahul, the important thing to notice about what happened is that it has just not happened in the case of the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict or in Saudi Arabia. If you look at what was going on between Hamas and the Israeli military, just very recently, you saw Hamas deploying small drones alongside their usual rockets that they do. And the Israelis, for example, remain particularly concerned about this emerging threat for smaller drones. They've invested quite a bit of money in developing countermeasures. Because as some of the panelists have already pointed out, the countermeasures are not easy. It's not obvious. It's not a matter of just installing some more air defense radars and you just say, you know, I've done my duty. There are electronic countermeasures, jammers. There are many things, all the way from that to, you know, some analysts, since this happened on Sunday, they also said these more science fiction-like notions of directed energy beams. Point is that this is one part of the story is about developing countermeasures. The other part of the story is developing the ISR capabilities needed to detect them, because you have to detect them early enough so that you can deploy these countermeasures. So the whole suite of solutions that you need to protect Indian installations close to the line of control or the international border against drone threats, both military drones, proper military drones that were deployed in the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict, and also these smaller drones. What I have some degree of problem with the narrative that you've seen in the media since yesterday was that there was a degree of panic among some sections of the strategic community. I'm not saying everybody panicked, some people did. But if you look at the trajectory of where drones were going, I would have said that this was just a matter of time. That, you know, these commercial quadcopters are not expensive. Okay, as Sandeep very nicely pointed out, what is interesting here is the shape chart used. It's the payload that is more interesting than just the quadcopter. So, but I have another, you know, listening to some of the panelists that have joined me, you know, a thought occurs to me. The thought occurs to me that we still don't know whether the drones originated from outside India, from Pakistan. I'm not going to say Pakistan occupied Kashmir, just Pakistan, because remember it's the international border there. Are they domestic? Were they launched by terrorists inside Jammu? These details have to be firmed up.
Sandeep, what do we know? We know that some of these drones have a capacity of about 13 odd kilometers, the ones that were used, but we also know that the Jammu airport, for example, has a lot of unauthorized constructions very close to the airport. We also know that that's the case with many airports in India. So you could have somebody, you know, he's just taken over a small shanty in one of these slums and he's sitting inside straight out of an Amazon or Netflix serial, and he's working on his screens, and he could be looking to target one of our high value military installations. Where did this drone come from? Do we know?
We don't know for sure, Rahul, but security forces believe that this drone had a very short flying time, and it didn't come from across the border, but it came from somewhere very close to the base. And it was possibly launched from either a building or from a vehicle. And it was, Rahul, the important point is it was not only launched, but it was also recovered, which means that it wasn't a kamikaze drone. It went there, it dropped the payload, and then it came back to the operator. And, you know, they've removed all trace of that drone attack. so to speak. So this is even more worrying. If you have drone teams like this, walking around Indian cities, where you can launch drones with very little warning time. All our countermeasures are basically that we're talking of are basically last-ditch terminal defensive measures, which have very little reaction time. A few seconds is what they have when to warn against an incoming drone. All of these systems, and it's going to be very, very difficult to defend, especially when you're talking of civilian airfields where you have commercial flying going on. So how do you deploy a counter drone system when you have aircraft up in the air, for instance? These are huge vulnerabilities, Rahul, and obviously the people who are behind this attack have kind of thought this through before they
Air Marshal Ahluwalia, the ability to fly in a drone, drop this payload, evacuate the drone and take it back seems to suggest that the operators are very, very skilled. It's not something that can be done by lay civilians.
No, Rahul, this narrative is actually going in a different direction. Let us conclude by saying that this is a threat. This is a threat that there was, it is a threat now, it will be a threat in the future. The question is, what will it threat? The threat will be against very important military installations, which can be damaged and cost you a lot in terms of operational capability, apart from the cost. The next thing that we have to worry about is where you have your political leadership congregating at very important, on certain days and in certain areas, and they can also be hit. The question is, can we protect ourselves? Yes, we can. We have systems in the world today. This jamming and all is obsolete systems because in any case, they are remote controlled, yes, through the RF radio frequency, but they can be jammed. But they also have auto navigation mode through the GPS. So what do we actually need? We need systems like laser, like I said, which convert electricity into light. And they are the killers actually of these drones. And it can happen. It's available in the market today with about 10 to 20 kilowatt, energy. It is available in the market. We must take this seriously. We must prepare for this threat in the future. And it is not impossible. There have been discussions going on for some time. Now, whether you can make it in India or get it from outside, either ways, you can do it in partnership.
Okay, so the one question that I'm sure that would have crossed your mind is, can India conduct such mini drone strikes itself? India has ordered kamikaze attack-style drones from the Israeli Defense Forces. Indian drone companies also are currently supplying drones to the military. And India is, as we speak, in the process of upping its own drone game.
You've been watching the news of the mini drone attacks in Jammu. Dinky little plastic drones triggering a state of high alert. Bits of plastic sparking fear and terror in an age of high-tech warfare. But you're probably also thinking, can't India also conduct mini drone strikes? The simple theoretical answer is yes. Converting a hobby drone into a grenade carrier isn't a complicated task and can be done at low cost without much effort. These silent killers are hard to detect and neutralize in time and can be used to wage war with plausible deniability. But if your question is whether India conducts such mini drone strikes already, well, that's where things begin to blur. Let's tell you what we know for sure. For starters, like we said, rigging an IED or grenade to a drone isn't difficult. Several medium performance hobby drones can easily be integrated for such tasks. Second, Indian forces have been scouting mini drones purpose-built for such strikes, like the Israeli Firefly seen in these pictures, a helicopter-style mini drone packing a sensor and warhead basically used by infantry teams to hunt down, pinpoint, and attack kamikaze style. These devastating drones have recently been ordered by the Israeli Defense Forces and could soon find a place with Indian infantry teams. And finally, Indian drone companies, which already supply high-quality drones to the Indian military, are looking to offer armed varieties of their quadcopters, giving the military the option of purchasing specialized, tiny hunter-killers.
There are multiple things, Shiv. So there are various category of armed drones that will be required, and there are reports that a significantly large number is going to be required. However, as a company, IdeaForge is probably not going to look at arming them ourselves. At the very best, we may look at partnering with people who want to, put such payload. Now, whether do we have payload capability or not, we do have payload capability on some of our systems. However, we are probably only looking at partnerships in that domain. So we're going to be exploring this via partners.
The utility of drone attacks like these is they're difficult to trace back and provide a compelling low investment effect on the adversary. Whether India will deploy such tactics remains to be seen. Bureau Report, India Today.
They're just a few kilos in weight, mostly made of plastic, need very little and basic skill to operate, and they've just joined the cutting edge of the terror knife against India. In an age where artificial intelligence and advanced drone warfare is ruling the roost, the simplest, most rudimentary drones are proving to be a serious security headache globally and have already been deployed with deadly effect.
The future warfare is said to be unmanned. India saw a small glimpse of it. The twin blasts in the Jammu Air Force Station are said to be the first drone attack on Indian military establishment. Alarm bells ringing over the lurking threat. A big hole on the roof of a building inside Jammu Air Force Station, where two blasts took place early Sunday morning, indicates an aerial attack using drones was part of the plot to target helicopters. The use of drones to carry out bombings might be a first in India, but it's a tried and tested attack method. Taliban have deployed small drones to drop bombs on government forces in recent attacks. Even ISIS has used the ploy to carry out attacks. Here is how drone attacks work. Drone attacks can be carried out by dropping bombs, firing missiles, or crashing armed UAV into the target. The stealth features allow the drones to go undetected, making deep penetrations. US forces have also adopted the strategy of drone warfare to ensure there are less casualties. More recently, the Azerbaijan used armed drones against Armenia last year. Various kinds of armed drones can carry payloads of about the weight of a grenade or a handgun. But new technology could soon come, allowing heavier payloads. Not just military targets, but drones could pose a big threat to critical civilian infrastructure like dams, power plants, and bridges in time to come. Drones are changing the face of modern warfare. Aerial attacks using drones loaded with missiles and laser-guided bombs capable of destroying targets deep inside enemy territory are the way forward. India too is developing such technology to boost its unmanned warfare tactics. China is a big player when it comes to drones and unmanned aerial vehicles. But Pakistan is also looking at using armed drones with Beijing's help. China has invested a lot of effort in developing civilian drones, and the same has been translated into combat drones. China is also one of the leading countries when it comes to R&D concerning drone technology.
The damage after the attack might have been minimal, but it has huge implications for the security establishment. Whether this was a trial run for something more sinister or a terror attack gone wrong, only an investigation will reveal. But India needs to ramp up its unmanned warfare capabilities because it is now clear that drone attacks are a reality. Abhishek Bhalla in New Delhi for India Today.
Now the problem really is that you can have a drone used for civilian purposes to film. We used it on the Election Express way back in 2014, or with minor modifications, the drone can carry payload. So, Kanav Kumar, how does this impact India's nascent drone industry, and how much effort does it take to convert a civilian drone into an armed drone?
You are very rightly said that it can be easily converted. A normal civilian drone can easily be converted to an armed drone, and anyone can do that. You just need a basic knowledge, how to arm, how to fly, all these things, and with some of the payloads like IED and extra thing. right? But civilian drone industry in India is a very big industry. It's a very promising industry, and there are a lot of young entrepreneurs who are actually, finding their way, finding their to become the unicorn of the industry or something like that, right? So there is a lot of hope in this industry. People are very optimistic to use it for inspection, mapping, survey. Lot of applications. Aerial cinematography become a new trend these days. So yes, these terrorist attacks and all these things, no doubt a threat for the civil industry as well. But the very important thing that we have to make a robust rules. Rules are there, we have to make a robust infrastructure. When we have the infrastructure, the people need to be very much skilled. The people need to be very much trained that how to fly. And we have to figure out and we have to find that who is friend and who is enemy. So we have to figure out that yes, the drones who are already authorized, who are registered with DGCA, Ministry of Civil Aviation, and whatsoever these process, right, they are the friendly drone. And we need to have a UTM, unmanned traffic management. We have traffic all over the roads. Sooner or later, drones, there will be millions of drones flying over the sky, right? We have beyond visual line of sight, BVLOS, Swiggy, another company. There are a lot of people who are trying, who are actually getting into drone deliveries. Sooner or later, it will be a reality. Someday you will find your vaccine coming by drone. It can happen. There are multiple of applications. We need the robust infrastructure. Rules are there. We have to figure out the right and the enemy and the friend drone. And that's the thing. We can, it will affect, but yeah, it's a very promising industry, and we have to, see the industry in a very positive manner. Attacks, I know this is very important, defensive things, and taking these serious, taking the drone
but when you've
attack
got something in the sky, at that moment you don't know whether this is a friendly drone or a hostile drone. Devinder Rana, quick final words. Are you concerned that if there is a terror attack over the next few days or weeks somewhere in Jammu and Kashmir, it could derail this nascent talks process between the Modi government and Jammu and Kashmir leaders, or between India and Pakistan?
The baseline is that the people of Jammu and Kashmir, irrespective of which region they belong to, they want peace, and they're not for terror. They're against terrorism. That should be very, very clear. No ambiguity in anybody's mind across the country or anywhere that people of Jammu and Kashmir do not support terror. They do not want terrorism on their ground. And they were very looking forward to the internal dialogue dimension, the internal dialogue that has started between the Honorable Prime Minister of India and the mainstream political parties, because people do feel that there's a need and an urgent need for a democratic process to emerge in Jammu and Kashmir, because the best of the bureaucratic rule under the governor's rule, the best of the best governors and the best of the best administrators cannot be a replacement for a democratically elected government. And people are looking forward to an engagement with the government of India. And I'm sure if the government of India is as proactive and open, and if the process of the inclusive dialogue continues and is steadfast, people will be for it and are for it. And these things do not deter the determination of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir has gone through this turmoil for a long time and cannot be deterred by all this.
I want to thank all our guests. This was, in some senses, a lucky escape. The next time we may not be so lucky, therefore we need to plan about how to deal with this latest threat from the skies. Coming up next, another big provocation from Twitter, this time Jammu and